stopped snowing, sir. Please, come in. Let me,
I'm, dying to hear your explanation of this, Major.
So am I, sir. So am I. I'm working on some top-secret experiments.
Well, it's strange that I wasn't advised of it.
Well, I didn't know about it myself until a few minutes ago. Please, sit down.
Oh,
that is, I didn't know it
thank
would
you.
work until a few minutes ago. It's a very simple procedure of seeding the silver iodide particles in a low-pressure barometric strata with inverse isobars.
Butch is today's standby pilot. He takes the first run. Up in the air, we get a bird's eye view of Butch's delicate dance.
He's just working the very edge of it.
And then Butch finds the cloud sweet spot.
Okay, he's fixing to light a flare. Okay.
Oh, I see the flare.
Yeah.
It looks like he's painting the sky.
The flares are shooting millions of silver iodide and calcium chloride particles into the cloud, where they collide with drops of water and ice and produce even more moisture. Then, usually within 20 minutes...
So what is this white smoky stuff over here?
That's rain.
Oh, that's rain.
Yeah, that's rain. All this is rain out here.
As the Vietnam War reached a crossroads, the U.S. Army had important decisions to make if they wanted to tip the scale back to their side. All options were on the table, both conventional and unconventional. And among the most unusual plots was Operation Popeye, launched in an attempt to weaken the Ho Chi Minh Trail, the Viet Cong's most vital mechanism and supply flow tool. To accomplish this, the U.S. would turn the weather into a weapon of war. Operation Popeye utilized cloud seeding technology, a type of weather modification that artificially creates rain or snow. With it, the U.S. military extended at least 5 monsoon seasons, causing detrimental effects to the unknowing Vietnamese citizens and soldiers. The mission spanned 5 years and cost taxpayers over $15 million. Despite multiple hearings in Congress, military officers, and even President Nixon himself denied it existing at all. The Vietnam War was, for many reasons, unlike any other war American soldiers had ever seen. Instead of a standard campaign frontline, where the American Army had more than enough experience, the Vietnam War's battles were fought in the dense South Vietnam jungle. This was an isolated region filled with mountains, animals, and endless greenery. The Viet Cong's most significant advantage over the U.S. in this region was the Ho Chi Minh Trail, a logistics network made up of dirt pads and hand-dug tunnels. It had secret bunkers, barracks, and even a few hospitals. All were cleverly hidden from American aircraft looking for them in reconnaissance missions. With its extensive web of roads and handmade paths, the trail helped the Viet Cong carry massive amounts of manpower, weapons, food, and other war material from one side of the country to the other. At over 1,000 miles in length, the trail ran from North to South Vietnam and extended through the kingdoms of Laos and Cambodia. The U.S. military attempted to destroy the trail with never-ending bombing campaigns. More bombs were dropped on Laos than in Germany and Japan combined in World War II. But none of the tactics were entirely effective. Even Agent Orange wasn't up to the task. The trail network was so vast and complex that if one of the paths were closed, all Viet Cong soldiers had to do was find a secondary way back to their base. But there was one thing that significantly slowed the supply flow on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Rain turned the trails into muddy messes, rendering them too difficult to supply vehicles to maneuver. Vietnam is known for having one of the world's longest monsoon seasons, usually running from April to October. June, July, and August are the months with the heaviest rain. And so the Department of Defense decided to attempt to recreate this process. Their goal was to try to control the weather and extend the monsoon season for as long as they could. To achieve this, they resorted to cloud seeding. This process is thought to have originated in 1946 by Vincent Schaefer, a chemist employed by General Electric. Cloud seeding is a method for artificially producing rain or snow. It requires modifying a cloud's chemical structure to boost the chances of precipitation with the added substance of silver iodide, which works as a condensation agent. There are two ways to disperse cloud seeding agents, either using large cannons to shoot the particles into the sky, or using airplanes to drop the particles from above. Throughout the planning period, the program went by several names to maintain its secrecy. Operation Popeye ended up being its official name. In a memorandum sent in January 1967 from Deputy Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs Foy D. Kohler to then Secretary of State Dean Rusk, Kohler described Project Popeye's goals, stating, quote, "The objective is to inhibit overland vehicular movement and to reinforce the bottlenecks already created at stream crossings by the bombing of bridges and ferry installations. With respect to Laos, the objective is to extend rainfall through the dry season, keeping the ground as near the saturation point as possible and obstructing traffic that normally forwards streams during the low water period. By generating rain, the American Army would slow the Viet Cong's truck traffic, impairing the supply flow throughout the trail and leaving them more susceptible to other attacks." Kohler also believed that cloud seeding was relatively more ethical than common warfare, stating, quote, "With respect to North Vietnam, we believe that as an interdiction measure, Popeye operations would be less harmful to the population and area affected than bombing." For Operation Popeye to be successful, it had to be carried out with the utmost secrecy. If information about America playing God and controlling the weather came out, there might be speculation about man-made alterations in other climatic anomalies they had no connection with. However, American planners were also convinced that their intervention on the weather would inevitably be discovered. According to Deputy Undersecretary Kohler's memo, quote, "In the first place, the altered weather will be observable, in contrast to the experimental phase conducted during normally rainy periods. Disclosure of planned weather experiments in India would make it likely that the connection would become apparent. Secondly, the possibility of a U.S. seeding aircraft being downed cannot be discounted. Thirdly, there is virtually no aspect of military operations in Southeast Asia which has not over time become the subject of leaks, or at least of speculation in the press." Operation Popeye is thought to be the first known successful application of weather control technology in warfare. The first flight of the operation took off on March 20th, 1967. A total of 2,602 flights were made in 5 monsoon seasons, from March to November. The 54th Weather Reconnaissance Squadron executed the cloud seeding procedure using the slogan, "Make mud, not war." Within their squadron, the operation was codenamed Motor Pool. 3 Lockheed C-130 Hercules aircraft and 2 McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom aircraft, based at Udon Thani Royal Thai Air Force Base, were altered and fitted with silver iodide ejectors. The 5 cloud seeding jets had the standard Southeast Asia camouflage colors and markings, but no unit identifiers, likely because the operation was top secret. The squadron flew 2 rainmaking operations per day, while also generating report data, which they presented to their superiors. The flights were officially logged in as standard weather reconnaissance flights. The Viet Cong would not know where the rain was coming from. The initial range of operations for Popeye was the eastern half of the Laotian Panhandle. 4 months after the first official flight, the area of intervention was increased toward North Vietnam. In September 1967, the O Sa Valley in South Vietnam was also added to the mix. As bomb operations over North Vietnam expanded, That area was eliminated from the list on April 1st, 1968. Likewise, the southern regions of North Vietnam became part of the operational site for only a couple of months. In 1972, northeastern Cambodia was added to the operational zone. A total of 47,409 units of Cloud Seed cartridges were expended. The operation's details were so secret that the soldiers who got selected to participate were usually kept in the dark until the last minute. Everyone had their own theory about what Operation Popeye was really about. Soldier Howard Kibble said, quote, "I had fleeting thoughts of flying over China, working for the CIA, you name it. But I signed a statement and found out that I was going to make rain. Geez, I thought they were kidding." Ethical and environmental concerns were Operation Popeye's downfall. An article in the Washington Post in 1971 by reporter Jack Anderson revealed that the U.S. was engaged in clandestine weather weaponization in Vietnam. The following year, in July of 1972, journalist Seymour Hersh reported in the New York Times about Operation Popeye using the headline, "Rainmaking is used as a weapon by the U.S." The article describes how some officials opposed the radical idea and even doubted its effectiveness due to the unknown long-term consequences, stating, quote, "Despite years of experiments with rainmaking in the U.S. and elsewhere, scientists are not sure they understand its long-term effect on the ecology of a region." A few days after the story's publication, the entire program was officially ended, and all cloud seeding missions stopped. Silver iodide, the material used in cloud seeding condensation, is known to be toxic to aquatic life. So when used in the long term, precipitation from seeded clouds could harm the environment. The news caught the eye of Democratic Senator Claiborne Pell, who demanded to have the specifications of Operation Popeye officially declassified and released to the public. As one of the leaders of the operation, Lieutenant Harry Edward Soyster was asked to testify in front of the Committee on Foreign Relations. He told them everything he knew. The cost of Operation Popeye was about $3.6 million per year, which included the operation and maintenance of the modified jets, purchase of seeding materials, and pay for the people involved in the project. The timing of all these public announcements did not work out well for the Department of Defense. In 1972, the environmental boom in America was burgeoning. In addition, the Nixon administration was already struggling with the beginning stages of the infamous Watergate scandal. When the public, especially environmental activists, found out that America had secretly been playing God and altering the weather in Vietnam, they were outraged. The operations were dubbed the Watergate of weather warfare. Operation Popeye was officially terminated on July 5th, 1972. In 1977, the U.S. joined the Environmental Modification Convention Treaty, or ENMOD, an international treaty which formally banned weather modification for malicious purposes. The agreement banned causing earthquakes and tsunamis, steering hurricanes, or tampering with the ionosphere. It also prohibited any kind of severe damage to the environment. Since cloud seeding has never been used in warfare again, the results cannot be measured or compared. Author James Roger Fleming agreed, stating, quote, "Although some claim that Operation Popeye induced from 1 to 7 inches of additional rainfall annually along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, no scientific data were collected to verify the claim." Even if Operation Popeye did help a few U.S. victories in Vietnam, a fact that is impossible to determine, its extreme secrecy and denials by the military and the government resulted in a significant strategic defeat for climatic modification with military purposes.
We just did something about climate change for the first time in decades. That's why we've got to win this as that hurricane bears down on Florida. We got to win in the midterms.
Can you tell us what this is and what effect climate change has on this phenomenon? We can come back and talk about climate change at a later time. I want to focus on the here and now.
Listen, I'm just trying to get that. You said you want to talk about climate change, but what effect does climate change have on this phenomenon that is happening now? Because it seems these storms are intensifying. That's the question.
I don't think you can link climate change to any one event.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, listen, I grew up there, and these storms are intensifying. Something is causing them to intensify.
Project Cirrus is the first official attempt to modify a hurricane. It was run by General Electric with the support of the U.S. military. The official theory was that by changing the temperature outside the eye wall of a hurricane, which they did by seeding the clouds with various compounds such as silver iodide, a decrease in strong winds will result. On October 13, 1947, Project Cirrus targeted a hurricane heading out to sea. Approximately 180 pounds of dry ice was dropped into the clouds. The crew then reported a pronounced modification of the cloud deck, and the hurricane abruptly changed direction and made landfall near Savannah, Georgia. The public blamed the government. Irving Langmuir, who pioneered General Electric's atmospheric research department and admitted that the project was about learning how to weaponize the weather, also claimed the reversal of the hurricane had been caused by Project Cirrus. But the government denied it for 12 years. After a short delay, the project officially continued, and in 1965, Project Storm Fury had targeted Hurricane Betsy for seeding. On that day, the storm immediately changed direction and made landfall in southern Florida. Congress blamed it on Project Storm Fury, but the government claimed that the hurricane shifted before they ever had a chance to seed it. And after 2 months of congressional hearings, the project was allowed to continue. During the Vietnam War, weather modification was weaponized in Operation Popeye. And as a result, starting in October of 1978, an international treaty now prohibits the military use of weather modification. In 1997, U.S. Defense Secretary William Cohen said that we have enemies capable of altering the climate and setting off earthquakes and volcanoes remotely through the use of electromagnetic waves. And so controlling the weather seems to be a very real thing. And while the media lies to you, the government has placed gag orders on employees of the National Weather Service, who have sought legal counsel to reverse these illegal gag orders. And they no longer need to seed the clouds. Chemtrails, or as John Brennan of the CIA calls it, stratospheric aerosol injection, allows these black government projects the ability to put whatever they want into the skies. And HAARP has the ability to change the temperature within the ionosphere. In congressional hearings, it was made known that HAARP was a successful operation of controlling the ionosphere with ultra-high-powered radio frequency, and that the Air Force and DARPA went on to develop their own versions.
The Air Force has gotten great value out of HAARP in the past. We took it over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HAARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere, be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed.
Frequency transmission manipulation of hurricanes is one of hundreds of patents on weather control. With conductive particles added to the storm, radio frequencies from multiple locations can steer a hurricane. According to geoengineeringwatch.org, this happened with Hurricane Ian.
This is Hurricane Ian, passing near the NexRad transmission facility in Key West, Florida. When the transmission facilities are fully energized, they have a repelling effect on any air mass that has been saturated with electrically conductive climate engineering elements. As Hurricane Ian is allowed to make landfall, the frequency transmission facility in Melbourne, Florida is fully engaged. This effectively slows Ian's migration inland. The transmissions can diminish precipitation in some regions while augmenting it in others.
1993, the FAA started warning pilots to stay away from a certain section of airspace over Alaska. The U.S. government was experimenting with a new breed of high-altitude electronic technology that was significantly altering the Alaskan airspace. The experiments continue to this day, and critics are warning that this project could have global effects that will destroy our planet. In Alaska, the rugged, pristine wilderness is timeless, most of it remaining just as it has for thousands of years. In the midst of all this natural beauty, just outside the small town of Gakona, stands an enormous and seemingly harmless antenna farm. It is a $100 million Air Force project known as HARP, and critics of the soon-to-be completed facility charge it just may turn out to be the ultimate doomsday machine.
It's got all the marks of Dr. Strangelove on it.
HARP is an acronym for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. According to program manager John Hesher, HARP is a research facility designed to study the ionosphere.
All the military have communications, surveillance, navigation systems whose paths either traverse the ionosphere or reflect from it. And so we need to be very careful about what we know about it and how we study it. What we're interested in is what is the effect of a large input of energy on the ionosphere.
The ionosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It is part of an electromagnetic field that keeps out harmful solar and cosmic radiation. One visible effect of the sun's rays hitting the ionosphere is the aurora borealis, known as the northern lights. The ionosphere also plays a vital role in worldwide radio communication.
The first transmission of radio waves across the ocean were quite a surprise when it was first done. People thought there'd be no chance to transmit the signals across the ocean by wireless. And in fact, what the ionosphere does is act like a mirror. And so you transmit a signal and it bounces off the ionosphere, then it bounces off the Earth.
When HARP is fully operational, it will transmit extremely powerful blasts of high-frequency radio waves directly up into the atmosphere, superheating the electrons that make up the ionosphere. This will cause them to disperse, effectively punching a hole in the ionosphere.
But after you turn the instrument off, this thing kind of moves around and it gets replenished. And within a few minutes, it's back to where you can't even detect that there's a hole anymore.
The Air Force says that manipulating the ionosphere and studying the effect will allow them to improve the efficiency of communications, navigation, and surveillance systems. But researchers outside the military see HARP as a high-tech weapon with global implications.
The way I see HARP as it is right now, it is a premier, top-notch, high-energy radio physics experiment, and has definite military applications.
Journalist Mark Farmer lives in Alaska and has written about the potential impact of HARP for both Jane's Defense Weekly and Popular Science magazine. He believes that HARP will be used to take giant X-rays of Earth.
Earth-penetrating tomography is a technique using extremely low-frequency radio waves. Today in geophysical probing, scientists will use explosives or a machine that thumps the ground to produce these waves, but HARP will stimulate the auroral electrojet to make an antenna thousands of miles long that will emit these ELF waves.
Farmer's research indicates that the extremely low-frequency waves would be capable of penetrating several kilometers into the Earth, ferreting out nuclear storage facilities and other underground military installations.
This is producing surveillance systems able to detect stealthy cruise missiles and aircraft. These are systems that will enable us to communicate at higher data rates and at greater distances with our ballistic missile submarines.
While the Air Force insists HARP is not an offensive weapon and is necessary for continuing national security, Alaska native Nick Begich proposes a different scenario in this new book.
The things that we found in other Air Force documents, one in particular was a document put together in '82. The document was called Low Intensity Conflict in Modern Technology, with a foreword by none other than Newt Gingrich. In one section spoke about using radio frequency radiation transmitters for disrupting human thinking, for basically debilitating troops invisibly by being able to bombard them with radio frequency that was tuned to just the right frequency, in just the right waveform, so as to totally disrupt their mental process and basically debilitate those troops.
Begich is the author of Angels Don't Play This Harp. It's been in print for over 20 years.
Those are all books I've written in different...
How many languages has...
my books are in 10. I made good money on it, and it paid my living.
Give me an estimate of how much you made on that book.
Over 20 years, probably $1 million.
You are the J.K. Rowling of mind
I'll
control.
tell you what, if I had wanted to do the opportunity cost to that was quite great, because I could have done a lot of other things during that time.
So break this down for me in a sentence or two that is understandable to somebody who knows nothing about this stuff. HAARP has the capability of controlling minds.
It has the ability of affecting the frequency following response, which is where the brain locks onto an external signal, begins to mirror it, and brain chemistry changes.
So even simpler than that is HAARP can control minds.
Absolutely can control in the sense of changing mental function.
Do we have any evidence that HAARP or any other government agency is actively right now trying to change the way people think?
Yes, I think we do.
You think we do or you know we do?
I know we do. This technology is possible with this instrument, and the only question is, have they done it?
But you don't know that they have.
No, couldn't answer that, never have. Can they? Yes. Would they? Yes. What do I know about government? I know government, when they have the capability, they'll utilize it. And they have utilized this technology in a lot of other areas.
In the interview with the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
So yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
In the 20th century, clouds were seeded by numerous countries around the globe with various chemicals to produce rain. China was just doing this over the summer in Beijing to make sure that there weren't any rain, that there wasn't any rain during the Olympics. But all this has changed dramatically with the U.S. military's secretive research and plans to control the planet's natural weather. This has not been given very much press, and we have to remember that we have a corporate-owned press where 85% of radio, television, and print media is owned by 5 corporations. So they're not going to talk about things that are of really serious consequence, and that's somewhat of the blessing, a mixed blessing of the internet, but there's certainly plenty of information on weather modification. The Air Force is on record as saying, quote, they want to control the weather by 2025, and we are not talking about just seeding the clouds for rain. Weather modification means, quote, any activity performed with the intention of producing artificial changes in the composition, behavior, or dynamics of the atmosphere, unquote. And as of April this year, there are more than 150 different weather modification programs around the world. Since about 2000, the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy have been spraying the entire United States sky with a toxic brew of chemicals and other biologic agents.
Mr. President, honored delegates, ladies and gentlemen, we shall propose further cooperative efforts between all the nations in weather prediction and eventually in weather control.
Think about that kind of communication and think about the opportunity that will provide. It lays the predicate and the foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
Okay, so we talked about this last week, and now we're going to do a deep dive with Davo. Dubai is making it rain in a sweltering desert by zapping clouds with electricity using drones.
Fascinating, isn't it?
So much to ask, but let's take it, and then we'll do a few questions.
Before we talk about what's happening in Dubai, let's talk about cloud seeding in general, because a lot of people, I don't think, understand what cloud seeding is. And this has been going on for decades, by the way. This is not something that's brand new. But traditionally, what cloud seeding is, it involves using aircraft or drones or even some cannons to push silver iodide up high into the clouds. Why silver iodide? Because that has the same crystallized structure as ice. So once it gets up into the clouds, it starts to accumulate ice on it and these large raindrops, which helps, especially in a cloud mass that's not really going to rain. It helps to bring rain and especially snow down.
So it works.
It does work. Marginally. But the problem with silver iodide through the years has been this, is that they feel it could be harmful to aquatic life. Okay. So over in Dubai, which is what you're seeing here, they took it a different step, and what they basically did, they had a fleet of drones that flew up into cloud cover, and they used electrical charges to force water droplets to combine into larger ones.
So not cloud seeding as we know.
No, they're not using the traditional silver iodide, which takes without the environmental aspect of that, okay? So they're using just electricity to create larger raindrops. Why larger raindrops? Because in Dubai, they only average about 4 inches of rain per year, as most of the rain that falls out of the clouds evaporates because it's so hot, it's so dry, and the water molecules are so tiny.
Such a thing and lie about it. Oh, and government.
Your own government lies as a matter of course, as a matter of policy. The Tuskegee experiments on black men in the 30s, Henrietta Lacks.
What are they trying to do?
That's the missing piece.
But it's not hard to imagine a government hiding, hoarding technology for 70 years at the expense of human life and the future of the planet. Driven not only by corporate greed, but a darker objective.
The takeover of America.
And then the world itself, by any means necessary, however violent, or cruel, or efficient. By severe drought, brought on by weather wars, conducted secretly using aerial contaminants and high-altitude electromagnetic waves.